Honorable Ministers, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, guten Tag, good afternoon, everyone. I am certainly very honored and delighted to speak to you today at the Berlin Energy Transition Dialogue. I wish to start by taking this opportunity to thank the government of Germany for its strong support for the African Development Bank Group, of whom I'm president, especially on the bank's 7th general capital increase, and for the major contribution from Germany towards the 16th replenishment of the African Development Fund, as well as your support for our work on renewable energy. I'd like to commend the Federal Ministry for Economic Affairs and Development on its new Africa strategy. Gerd Muller used to run this, and I used to think he was actually a football player. But then I said, well, Germany actually got a minister who was a football player. And so he said, no, I'm not Gerd Muller. And so he signed me, got a ball and signed it for me. So I keep it in my office. So, but I do say you keep scoring development goals. So well done, my brother. Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, as we discuss energy transition, as it relates specifically to Africa, let me state from the onset that Africa is completely energy deficient. The continent accounts for only 6% of global energy use and just 3% of global electricity demand. Africa has made, however, important progress in terms of access to electricity, with the population with access to electricity increasing from 44% to 56% between 2010 and 2020. Now, despite this progress, close to 600 million people still do not have access to electricity, and close to 1 billion people lack access to clean cooking energy. To meet SDG 7 goal, Africa needs to connect 90 million people annually to electricity in the next 8 years, and to also shift 130 million people from dirty cooking fuels every single year. Africa's energy transition is such a huge task, and it will cost an estimated $100 billion a year between 2020 and 2040. Universal access to electricity is possible in Africa if the continent fully unlocks its massive potential in renewable energy sources. The declining cost of solar and wind energy technologies, coupled with more affordable energy storage systems, makes renewables cost competitive and presents a unique opportunity for Africa to underpin its future energy needs based on renewables. The African Development Bank is spearheading efforts to unlock Africa's vast renewable energy potential. Potential is important. We can list it, but we don't eat potential. We can't power anything with potential. We have to unlock that potential. As you just heard, the bank no longer funds coal energy projects. Since 2016, 86% of our investments in power generation have been in renewables, including transformative projects such as the 510 megawatts Nouazazate solar project in Morocco, the world's largest concentrated solar power plant, and the 310 megawatts Lake Turkana wind project, which is sub-Saharan Africa's largest wind farm. The bank's $20 billion Desert to Power project is currently developing 10,000 megawatts of solar power all across 11 countries in the Sahel and in East Africa. It will provide renewable energy for 250 million people in terms of access to electricity. And when it is completed, by the way, it will be the largest solar zone in the world. The projects are currently underway, being implemented in Chad, Mali, Burkina Faso, Mauritania, Eritrea, Niger, of course, includes northern Nigeria. Through the bank's Sustainable Energy Fund for Africa, which we call SEFA, we are investing in green baseload power, as well as mini-grids and decentralized off-grid energy systems. I'd like to thank the government of Germany for its 190 million euros support for the SEFA program. The bank is also supporting the just energy transition in South Africa, which currently relies on coal for 80% of its energy supply. And we are currently working with the government of Senegal. The minister is here, it's good to see you, as part of the Just Energy Transition Partnerships initiated by the G7. Ladies and gentlemen, while we must and will do all possible to expand the use of renewable energy, especially given Africa's enormous potential for solar, for hydro, for wind, and geothermal energy sources. The intermittency, however, of new renewable energy sources, in particular wind and solar, makes it currently impossible to guarantee security of supply. Natural gas is therefore a key part of the energy mix for assuring security of supply and is a critical transition fuel for Africa. Transitioning from coal to gas generation will reduce emissions in Africa by about 40%. Estimates also show that if sub-Saharan Africa, which if you exclude South Africa, were to triple all its electricity consumption using only natural gas, you know how much it will contribute to global emissions? 0.6%. That's it. Similarly, shifting from fuel wood, charcoal, and kerosene to cooking to the use of liquefied petroleum gas will lower emissions, saving forests, biodiversity loss, and millions of lives, especially of women and children that die from these heavily polluting cooking fuels. Also, Africa's natural gas reserves has become a new major supplier of gas to Germany and the rest of Europe, especially as they deal with the aftermath of the Russian war in Ukraine on gas supplies from Russia. We have a saying in my native language, I'm Yoruba. It says, the eye that cries must see at the same time. Africa is now a solution to Europe's energy needs. So as we think of energy transition, we need to think holistically. Ladies and gentlemen, Africa is well positioned to help to lead the revolution on clean energy industrial value chains because it accounts for 80% of the world's platinum reserves, 50% of the cobalt reserves, and 40% of the manganese reserves, and of course, huge resources for graphite and lithium. Africa is therefore a crucial source for minerals and metals for clean energy value chains, including electric vehicles and utility-scale battery storage. And we shouldn't just export, because we're used to doing that in Africa, export everything raw. That's the fastest way to poverty. We must and we should manufacture. Africa, I submit, is the perfect place to build lithium-ion batteries to power German cars. We must also unlock Africa's potential for green hydrogen, estimated at $1 trillion. Some African countries have already started developing green hydrogen projects. To support this development, as well as drive the growth of green infrastructure in Africa, the African Development Bank, Africa 50, and the African Union have launched what is called the Alliance for Green Infrastructure in Africa, or otherwise called AGIA or AGIA. AGIA, ladies and gentlemen, targets to raise $10 billion to accelerate just and equitable transition to net zero emissions. I look forward to Germany's strong support for AGIA. Finally, the African Development Bank is investing in clean cooking technologies that lower emissions. Our equity investment in Spark Plus Africa Fund supports the development and distribution of clean cooking energy solutions, including biomass stoves, advanced biomass fuels, liquefied petroleum gas, ethanol, and biogas systems. It will deliver clean cooking solutions for about 2 million households and reduce around 16 million tons of CO2 equivalent of carbon emissions. Ladies and gentlemen, we all have a collective responsibility to do our part in limiting global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius. What Africa needs is a lot more financing to support its drive to universal access to energy. Global dialogues on Africa's energy transition must be pragmatic and not ideological. While Africa must accelerate the development of its massive renewable energy sources, Africa must also be given the time to transition and allowed to use its natural gas as transition fuel, just like it is the case in Germany, as well as Europe. What is acceptable for Germany and Europe must be acceptable for Africa. There must be equity, justice, and fairness on energy transition. Thank you very much. Vielen Dank.